Today marks our 25th rally.
Wow.
We started a year ago, well, I did, on December 5th. That's when we made the news. We're gathered here today, particular rally, to answer the pleas from our brothers and sisters in Australia as they struggle for freedom in a country that is no longer resembles a democracy. Politicians have paved the way to overthrow their people in a trial run of what the Great Reset or the New World Order will look like. I will now read to you their plea to the rest of the world. Founder of Reignite Democracy Australia has sent an SOS. She states, her name is Monica Smith, has been defending basic freedoms for all Australians over the last year since non-democratic restrictions have been brutally imposed on us. Australians are facing unprecedented government actions that have robbed us of our fundamental rights and freedoms, all enforced with extreme aggression by the police force. Many Australians have no longer feel safe in our own once democratic country. We have tried every peaceful and democratic means available to our voice heard. However, we have been ignored. Australian citizens have held regular protests asking for human rights and rule of law to be restored. These democratic demonstrations have been met with unparalleled police suppression. Members of the public are being pepper sprayed, and many were recently fired upon with rubber bullets by the very people Australians pay and trust to protect them. The police are supposed to be part of the public service. Instead, they have been turned into an instrument of public oppression, even descending into jailing people for their political views. These are some of the rights that have been stolen or attacked. The right to have a political party, to peacefully protest, to work without being subject to coercion, to operate a business, to make personal medical choices, to medical privacy, the right for persons, irrespective of their health or jabba status, to be considered equal, to freely express political dissent, to assemble, and the right to socialize. To every Australian, it seems like the police are being used by the government to enforce unjust laws and tyranny upon the country. Due to the state of emergency declarations being in place, police have less means available to operate the orders given to them by the government. Basically, it looks and feels like we're living in a police state. In Victoria, protests have become battlefields. The Victorian police no longer work to protect the people. They work to enforce the ever-changing directives handed down by the government. Businesses have shut down. People are being forced to take a jabba without informed consent. Children have missed months of schooling. The country is in distress, and we need your help. These truths are being aggressively hitting in our country. Local journalists in the mainstream media have betrayed their traditions. They no longer stay neutral and fairly report the different sides. Instead, they have joined the authorities, hurling insults at anyone who does not obediently comply with government edicts, or they scrupulously ignore or misreport what is happening with protests across the community. On this day, we call upon politicians, international leaders, and all concerned citizens to respond to our SOS. We respectfully ask you, international leaders, to consider supporting the requests laid out in this document. If the requests are not met, your citizens are no longer safe here. These are the requests we ask from the international leaders on behalf of our Australian brothers and sisters. No more lockdowns. No mandatory jabbas or medical procedures. Open, reasonable options for international travel. If the above requests are not honored, we ask you take the following steps to safeguard the human rights of citizens residing in Australia by expediting the safe return of citizens home to Australia. Make a public statement that no longer considers it safe for the citizens to remain in Australia. Extending an offer of asylum Australians who do not feel safe to remain in their home country. We as international citizens are asked on this day to answer the SOS from Australia. We stand with them today to demand that other democratic countries around the world open their eyes and answer their pleas. And stop the tyranny in Australia. Free Australia. End police brutality in Australia. Open up Australia. Stop mandatory jabbas in Australia, and we stand by Australians. Our brothers and sisters in Australia are in trouble. The Australians would prefer their own country to restore its safety and human rights, but if this cannot be done, many of them are looking for refuge in a safer country. Thank you for your consideration in this delicate matter. Monica Smith, founder of Reignite Democracy Australia. Also, the Aboriginal community issued a plea for international assistance over forced jabbas and forced detention. Dave Lernpa Cole, a member of a group of Aboriginals from the Central Desert, part of what the tribal members call the Original Sovereign Tribal Federation, made a unified plea for international support in the video they posted on BitChute. In what appears to be a real and troubling situation, the indigenous tribal members stood in unity, announcing their need for international assistance. The group declared that Aboriginal groups in the Northern Territory are being forcefully jabbed and over abusive social pressures to encourage or motivate adherence to the National Australian Copper Jabba Protocol. This group also declared that military and law enforcement, both Australian national and local and other international peacekeepers, are now deployed in this campaign to jabinate the Aboriginals of Australia essentially and forcefully. In what can only be considered an unprecedented event, appears to be insidious, unacceptable form of state-sponsored forcible jabbas. From the state's point of view, these actions are driven by public health mandates to stop the spread of SARS-CoV-2. The troops are preventing Aboriginals from leaving the area and being told that they are doing it for a number of different reasons. Prevent the spread of copper virus to the vulnerable people. For the good of the community, people are scared and they are there calming them with their guns. To facilitate the administration and availability of a life-saving jabba. The people are then being held and not allowed to leave the areas. Police are involved in the operation going door to door in Aboriginal communities to intensively engage with those who do not want the jabba. As part of the Australian Aboriginal Copper Jabba campaign, members of the Aboriginal community who test positive for copper virus or who have interacted with a copper-infected individual who are discovered through contact tracing are being picked up by authorities and relocated to quarantine facilities. Indigenous community members are being pressured and intimidated by a show of force from the Australian government and its dispatch of military and police as part of a specialized task force to raise jabba rates in remote indigenous communities where they have pockets of jabba hesitancy, lowering the overall jabba rates in the Northern Territories of Australia. So there you go. The rates aren't high enough.
Wow.
In a press conference, Michael Gunner, Chief Minister of the Northern Territories, announced a hard lockdown in Aboriginal communities, meaning people are not allowed to leave their homes except for medical treatment or if required by law. Adding that people are being removed, bused off the camps in military trucks to what they call quarantine centers. Not just people diagnosed with copper virus, but close contacts too. Some other Australian states are already building quarantine camps specifically for Aboriginal communities and has now placed 1/3 of its unjabbed population under lockdown with built double electrified fence quarantine facilities. These sites are expected to be available from the end of November until June of 2022. In the Northern Territory of Australia, the population of approximately 246,700, The total copper virus attributed cases are 265. The total number of deaths? 0.
Wow.
This is, in every sense, a war crime being committed against the Aboriginal and Australian peoples. This is clearly a crime against humanity. It's evident now that something very serious is going on. Note that whatever tyranny and oppression you see in Australia is destined for your country, if we are not able to stop it. It seems evident Australia is ground zero. What is going on in Australia will be coming to you and your family if you don't stand up and say no. That was their message. And if Canadians think this type of thing could not happen here, think again. The degree to which Justin Trudeau has integrated the will of the majority into government policy and his disinterest in democracy aligns with governance nation of China. Trudeau's pseudo-communist conversion of Canada will continue unhindered unless we stop the draconian dictatorship from happening. We can already see it happening in our own province. The Nova Scotia government is trying to steal away our freedom with their mandates on Jabba Jabba and proof of Jabba policy, with ongoing, everlasting public health measures, all in the name of the collective greater good. This medical tyranny, a medical apartheid, and draconian. Last Sunday, the day after our rally, our province renewed the state of emergency that took an effect noon and now is extended till noon Sunday, December 12th, unless the government terminates or extends it again. As they have proven themselves all along in the past 21 months, they will never relinquish that state of emergency. For those who thought governments were merely issuing temporary restrictions and mandates on the population, the term temporary is being stretched to the limit. Far too many people seem to think it is the job of politicians to restrict the rights and freedoms of others just so they can feel a bit more safe. The longer people continue to give in to fear and continue to put up with the never-ending shifting of goalposts, the more our politicians will feel they can get away with anything.
That's right.
Fear makes it easier for politicians to maintain their control over the populace, and scared people are often willing to give up their rights and freedoms. Restricting liberal individual liberty expands the role of the state and dominates the status narrative. Today, in our province, we are now having to face the copper Jabba Jabbas being available to the 5 to 11 year age group. What do we know about this pediatric copper Jabba Jabba? We must consider that this product has a trial study date that commenced on May 15th of 2021 and end date of June 12th of 2023. The emergency use of a medical treatment that is currently still in phase 2-3 trial can only result in potentially inflicting serious and unnecessary suffering on a populace that is not risk of infection from the copper virus. According to Public Health Agency of Canada, under the summary of evidence, copper virus burden of disease in children 5 to 11 years of age generally presents mild or asymptomatic SARS-CoV-2 infection. Severe outcomes from copper virus, such as hospitalization and death, are very infrequent. The guiding ethics consideration recommendation should be whether the Jabba Jabba is in the children's best interest. While it is not justified to jabinate children only to benefit others, the indirect population level benefits of Jabba Jabbas can also benefit children. The National Advisory Council on Immunization does not advocate for kids to be jabbed. Their scientists say it's not justified to jabba children only to benefit others, yet they still recommend it. With that being said, here's another concern with the administration of this pediatric Jabba program in children aged 5 to 11, is that of informed consent. They say that this age group are unlikely to be deemed capable of consenting to Jabba, and decisions relating to their Jabba will likely be made by parents or guardians. You would think, right? Well, we could be wrong. According to Nova Scotia's Department of Health and Nova Scotia does not have a minimum age for giving consent for copper virus immunization or healthcare decisions. Parental or guardian consent is not required for mature minors, and consent given by mature minors cannot be overturned by parents or guardians. A mature minor is a person under the age of 19 who is able to understand the purpose of the immunization, the benefits and possible reactions of the copper jabba jabba, and the risk of not getting immunized. What are they considering the age of a mature minor to be if those children are between the ages of 5 and 11? This should be very alarming to people, especially parents who have children in school in that age group. Currently, it appears that our public health officials are working overtime to ensure that it is easy peasy to get your little one's jab once without your consent. Sadly, Nova Scotia began jabbing children ages 5 to 11 on December 1st. There was 25,000 JABA appointments were booked for this age group on Wednesday, as of Wednesday, and 460 kids were jabbed on the first day.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
Here is one way they are punishing the children in that age group to coerce them into getting that jabba jabba. Dr. Strang announced that Nova Scotia is immediately restricting out-of-province travel for kids aged 11 and under who are taking part in sports, tournaments, and arts performances until at least early January, to curb the copper virus spread. He said, I strongly encourage parents to book jabba jabba appointments for their children as soon as possible. It is our best defense against this virus and our best path forward to living with fewer restrictions. Yeah, right. Unbelievable, the antics of our public health officials. As I check the Nova Scotia copper virus tracker on a daily basis, I can see how effective these jabba jabbas really are. Check this out. In the month of September, there were 544 reported cases and 3 added deaths. The month of October, when they started the proof of jabba jabba policy, there were 716 reported cases and 3 added deaths. In this past month of November, there were 842 reported cases and 10 added deaths.
Wow.
I'm no scientist or statistician, but I can easily see that since the launch of this jabba jabba, the numbers have not decreased, cases are still occurring, and deaths are still happening, whether people are jabbed or unjabbed. They do not protect you or prevent you from getting or spreading the copper virus. They only help you in preventing serious illness, as Dr. Strang says. We know the goal of our government is not safety, immunity, or prevention. The goal is jabba jabbas, and only jabba jabbas, and nothing else. Now is the time to exercise your parental rights. Educate yourself to the risks of the particular experimental pediatric copper jabba jabba. Question doctors and pharmacists and find out what the ingredients are. Don't just blindly comply and jab your kids. Ask the questions. And when the answers don't come so easily or quickly from health providers, that should raise a red flag. Also, holding our politicians and public health officials accountable through the notice of liability forms available from Action for Canada. I printed off a few copies of the ones to serve elected or appointed officials, if anybody wants to file against our Premier Tim Houston or our Chief Medical Officer Dr. Strang. So let us not give up. Let's fight for our rights, the rights of every Canadian, young or old, and the rights of every Australian, and the rights of all the peoples around the world who are taking a stand against the tyranny, the draconian measures, and the unjust treatment of their citizens. Let the world know with loud voices that you object to the medical apartheid and that you will not take it anymore. Yell it out! No more mandates! No more mandates! Are you going to let them take our children and experiment on them? No! Tell Dr. Strangler, leave our kids alone! Leave our kids alone! Leave our kids alone!
conclusion, we have one